So reading this at a time where the Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, was saying some deeply xenophobic things was really rough on me and my heart because on one hand, I wanted to go home, back to a place where no government can tell me my presence is creating an island of strangers. But on the other hand, Ben Okri's book was reminding me that Nigeria hasn't changed its disappointing ways for decades. And so, like, what am I going back home to and for? I want to talk about weariness in Nigerians and how it is so vividly represented in Ben Okri's The Famished Road. My heart was so heavy and distressed for most of this book because of how Okri paints a very detailed image of the daily lives of Nigerians living in poverty. What got to me the most was that this book was written in the 90s and set in the 50s, but it could have very easily been written and set in 2025. Let me say that again. In the 90s, Benjamin Okri wrote a book about the struggle of Nigerians in the 50s, and now in the 2020s, that story would still be an accurate representation. And if that doesn't show you how the country has made little to no progress in decades, I don't know what will. The book also made me realize that you can take the girl out of Nige, but you can't take the Yoruba out of her. Because this book is in the fantasy genre, and my experience of fantasy so far is that they're usually set in worlds that very obviously don't exist and cannot exist in real life. But this book is about an Abiku child, and so a part of me kept thinking, this isn't fantasy. like, this is real life. And that kind of shocked me because I don't identify as a spiritual person. I barely identify as a religious person, but I still really struggled to think about the spirit world and the spirit realm and witches as things that don't exist. And then also the part of me that knows for a fact that we don't think of and address mental health issues in Nigeria in the right or proper way because of our culture and how deeply spiritual we are. That part of me also kept thinking, is this boy seeing spirits or is he hallucinating? Is he hearing voices because his spirit friends are talking to him, or is he having a schizophrenic episode? Honestly, reading the book was a small revelation into how I have internalized aspects of our culture and beliefs that I would have sworn I had absolutely not absorbed. So, like I said earlier, the book follows an Abiku child. For non-Nigerians, an Abiku child is a child that keeps reincarnating and being born to the same parent. So they are born, they die as children, they come back again to the same parents, and then they die again, and the distressing cycle just keeps going and going. But the Abiku child, in this case, for whatever reason, decides that he wants to remain in the physical world. He wants to stay alive. And this causes a lot of chaos and results in an endless invasion by the spirit world into the physical realm because they are constantly trying to get him back and abduct him, which essentially means they are constantly trying to kill him. Yes, this boy has so many near-death experiences. At some point, I found myself essentially screaming, Benjamin Okri, just like, leave this boy alone. He's just a child. Let him be. And honestly, that chaos would have been enough for a really good book. But Ben Okri said no. Life has several layers, and you can experience multiple horrors simultaneously. And this boy and his family must. Let me paint you a picture here. In the first 100 pages of this book, we're so deeply entrenched in the spirit world that I couldn't quite tell what was real and what wasn't. And I started questioning if this book was about anything and if we would just keep on wandering and being lost in the spirit world trying to get this boy back home to his parents. And then all of a sudden, I realized that Benjamin Okri, I keep calling him Benjamin as if I know him. And then suddenly I realized that Ben Okri was subtly, but also not subtly, showing us in a very detailed way how poverty persistently and consistently erodes your sense of joy, dignity, and freedom, and how rife corruption is in the political landscape, and how those dumbasses we have in 2025 are basically repeating the same old tricks. Ben Okri painted such a low level and detailed picture, like details. That is the word that keeps coming to mind every time I think about this book. Reading this book at a time where the British Prime Minister, if you don't know, I live in the UK. So reading this at a time where the Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, was saying some deeply xenophobic things was really rough on me and my heart, because on one hand, I wanted to go home, back to a place where no government can tell me my presence is creating an island of strangers. But on the other hand, Ben Okri's book was reminding me that Nigeria hasn't changed its disappointing ways for decades. And so, like, what am I going back home to and for? I have so much to say about this book that I wrote about it and we'll be posting it on my Substack soon. Yeah, this was such a great read. It is so worthy of the Booker Prize that it won. Ben Okri's writing is so poetic and he fully immerses you in his world. And I know that is not only a talent that is rare, but also a skill that must take a tremendous amount of work. That's it though. I will say this was a difficult read. Difficult, but absolutely worth it.